The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view, and especially today's show, where we've got some very uniquely Catholic technology stuff to discuss. But first, joining me today on the panel are Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father Andrew.
Hey, Dom. Happy Ash Wednesday.
Happy Ash Wednesday as we record this. And Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Howdy.
So, yeah, as Father Andrew said, we're recording this on Ash Wednesday. You're probably getting this on the day after. Well, I call it Meat Thursday because it comes between Ash Wednesday and the first Friday of Lent, and it's the one day, you get to have, it's like a meat sandwich, so that's where we're going to be releasing this episode. And given that Lent has begun, I'm hungry. We're recording this late at night, having all day. So, I'm going to be a little wonky today. But given that it's the beginning of Lent, we wanted to talk about technology and Lent. Obviously, that's what we're about. We're a Catholic technology podcast. And so we did talk a year ago. We did a show on using and fasting from tech during Holy Week, which I think, wasn't that your first show with us, Father Andrew?
It sure was.
Wow, we've come full circle. It's almost a year. So that's awesome. So we thought we'd take this opportunity to talk about the start of Lent and using our technology. So first up, is it okay to use technology to observe Lent? I know a lot of my friends are giving up social media for Lent and that sort of thing. What do you think? What's your point of view on where the place of technology in our Catholic devotional life?
Well, so it's always important to remember what Lent is all about. That Lent is all about that repentance, conversion of heart in order to draw deeper and closer to Jesus Christ. So technology is good in as much as it can assist in that process. So I think it's good to use technology in order to help in that. I know that a lot of people use their smartphones to pray, and I think that's wonderful. But I think that there's also, of course, a lot of dangers to it too, that you can end up using technology just to distract yourself and to avoid actually entering into the silence of your heart. And so I think there's danger there, but there's also some really great tools that you can use with it. But always keeping in mind that what's the goal here? The goal is to have that conversion of heart in order to draw deeper and closer to Jesus Christ. So if it's helping you in that, it's great. If it's not, it should go.
I heard a homily today where the homilist was saying that it's not enough just to give something up for its own sake, but if you give something up, and in this case, if you give up, some time on technology, you should be replacing it with prayer, fasting, or almsgiving. So if you're giving up chocolate, then the money you would have spent on chocolate, you maybe should give to the poor. And so, like you said, if you're giving up time on social media or time playing games on your phone or, whatever technology thing that you may be fasting from, maybe give that time to God in prayer or some other service or something like that.
I'm going to preach just a bit here. Actually, my homily tonight, I just made the point, and I would throw this out there for the listeners to reflect on, is that prayer, fasting, and almsgiving can correlate to virtues and vices. So as we're struggling to avoid pride and grow in humility, we pray, because pray puts us in a fundamental relationship that says God is God and I am not, and I'm submitting myself to God. I'm not God of my own world. Almsgiving is to combat greed. So the virtue there is generosity, that when we want to just collect and collect and collect things, we're going to give alms to the poor and give of our time and our talent to combat that tendency to greed. And then fasting, of course, is that which we deny our bodies something that is good. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but in order to recognize our true hunger for Christ. And so that is the virtue there is temperance, and it's combating. And I pointed out in particular lust and gluttony, which are both using the world for its own sake and not pointing towards God. So
awesome.
I know that didn't really have anything to do with technology, but that's a helpful reflection as you're entering into Lent.
That's awesome. No, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, using technology to help you live a better Lent. And this time we used podcasting to get a little bit of that. And we could talk a little bit more about Catholic podcasts for Lent. But Pat, what do you think about this idea of modifying our use of technology during Lent for good or for more or less of use of it? What do you think of that?
Well, I know I've seen a lot of the people that I know on Facebook give up Facebook for Lent. For me, that would be the wrong thing to do because my contacts on Facebook are not primarily kittens and cute babies. They're people that have something that I want to hear and I want to talk with, and often about faith or world issues or things like that, and not politics. But so for me, if I cut myself off from that, I've cut myself off from that enrichment.
Right.
And so I don't want to cut off that, but I can certainly say, I might want to say, limit the amount of times I go back and look at email, limit the amount of times that I'm checking on other things, hide the games if I'm used to playing games. One of the things I did was basically set up a different email account, although you could do it with a filter. And all of my reflections, daily gospels, all of those things go into that one email. I open that. I've got a lot of spiritual things in front of me that I can draw from.
Oh, cool.
And so cutting myself off from technology doesn't help me, but I do modify what I'm looking at with my technology.
Yeah. One of the things I've done is I've deleted the Facebook app from my phone and my iPad. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook during the day. I find that I waste a lot of time in the morning, just kind of when I've just gotten up and I'm just hanging around and I'm scrolling, mindlessly scrolling on my phone or my iPad usually. And the same thing late at night. And like I should be going to bed, but I'm scrolling because I need to get to the bottom of the newsfeed, right?
Right. No bottom.
Yeah, there's no bottom. It's bottomless. And so I find like if I delete the apps, then they're not just there for me to tap and open up. Like I can still get into them because I have to use it for work. I have to post stuff for podcasts and communicate with listeners. But I have to go into the browser, and the browser is a much less convenient way of interacting with Facebook anyway. So it's a natural limit on it. And when I think that for me, but I still have a lot of contacts, and like you say, a lot of good stuff that I get through social media, and I have to use it for work. So I find that's a good balance for me. But those are some good thoughts.
One of the thoughts that I also started doing about a year ago was instead of just scrolling through the feed, when I go to Facebook, I go up to the notifications thing, the little balloon, and I go through those. And that's going to be where I find most of the people that I'm interacting with in this way that I'm talking about. And I don't just scroll through the whole thing unless I've just got some spare time and I want to go look at some things that I haven't seen for a while.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I'm doing to enforce the only look at the things that I think are helpful at this point.
You've turned on notifications for all of those things then?
Well, it's the little bubble at the top that says notifications. No, I don't get them on my phone.
No,
I don't get them on.
Right.
But it's just the little bubble at the top that says, show me all the notifications I would have gotten.
Right. But you've turned on for those particular sources of information, notifications to be notified whenever those particular ones. Because
I'm just using the default notifications.
Oh, really?
In other words,
So because I don't get notifications up there except for when I said, show me, let me know when this person has posted. So I don't remember ever setting that for any of these people. Oh, interesting.
Specifically, I think it was the default. I'm going to see the conversations that are people that I've got friends set up with. Oh. And I don't go through all of them, just the ones that I'm interested in.
Okay. So what you mentioned setting up an email account to get special, spiritually fruitful emails and that sort of things.
Right.
So I wanted to mention a few of those that I've found that are really good. So Dynamic Catholic is Matthew.
Matthew Kelly.
Kelly's, thank you. I knew I was going to get it. Matthew Kelly's apostolate, and they have your best Lent ever program that they do every year. And at the beginning of Lent, you can submit your email address, and every day you're going to get some Lenten devotional emails to help you think about and reflect on Lent. Another one that I really like is Bishop Robert Barron's Word on Fire. They have a Lent Reflections. So Dynamic Catholics is dynamiccatholic.com. The Word on Fire is lentreflections.com. So those are both a couple of really good ones that I like. Do you guys have any of those sorts of things that you like to get like via email, Lenten Reflection?
I joined the online St. John of the Cross Lenten Retreat, and that day's basically, again, I'll put a link in the show notes, but you sign up for that, and you get, not every day, but you get a summary of like that week. And so you get a PDF that you can then put on your phone and go through different prayers, different reflections, etc. And Formed, the organization that is good for lots of books, movies, etc. They have a Lenten Reflections that they send you on a daily basis to do that. So I've got like the Daily Gospel and several things all coming into that one mailbox.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I would just throw out there too that the USCCB has you can go to the USCCB website and you can sign up for emails of the daily readings, or you can actually subscribe to their podcast, which is a audio version of the daily readings. I personally don't do that. I actually don't really like more emails coming into my email.
Right.
So what I typically do, and unfortunately this requires a subscription, but I have a subscription to the Magnificat.
Yes.
And so of course I have the physical little book with reflections and the daily readings. But I also really like it because I have access to the Magnificat app. And so I can pull it up on my app and get all the same information there as well. So that one unfortunately need a subscription, but
yeah.
The USCCB daily readings are completely free.
And do they have a specifically Lenten app, like an app for Lent? Because I know they have a Lent book that they send out as well. I'm not sure about. Okay, so but if you go to we'll put a link again, the Magnificat website, they'll have all that information.
Oh, you're asking Magnificat. Magnificat does have a book, Lenten Reflections.
Oh, okay.
Because we bought a bunch of those for the cathedral parish, and they're sitting out in the pews.
But those are paper, not electronic, correct?
Those are paper.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. That's cool. Another one I want to suggest if you don't want to get emails is if you go to the Ascension Press YouTube channel, they have a great roster of presenters, including Father Mike Schmitz, who is a blast. He's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically John Krasinski as a priest, as the way I always see it. The guy from The Office, Jim from The Office. But they also have like Franciscan Friars of the Renewal and Matt Fradd and what was it? Jackie and Bobby, Jackie Francis, and her husband, who they talk as couples, but every day there's a new reflection from one of these folks on their page, and right now, of course, they're talking about Lenten things. And it's really informative and fun and short, under 10 minutes, usually between 5 and 8 minutes or so. And I think if you prefer your content visual, that would be a good thing for you. Because again, like a lot of people, like for me, emails are okay, except after a while, I stop seeing I start scanning past them in the cascade of emails in my inbox, although that separate email account is a good idea.
That's why I put them in a separate email, because I don't do well watching videos because I'm usually trying to do other things in between, and that doesn't work for me.
Right.
So having an email that I can just sit down for 10, 15 minutes and kind of go through some of the things and reflect, that helps me.
Yeah.
I'm more word oriented, I guess.
One thing that's I was thinking about is Verbum. It's the Catholic study software. They started like Bible study software, but it's so much more now. And they have, it's basically a whole library of books in electronic form within the software that lets you search and find related things. So it's not just ebooks like you can buy on Amazon, but they're within this software that lets you search through it. And they have a number of resources, some free, some that you could buy, that are for Lent. And so they'll connect to, say, the day's readings. They'll have related stuff from saints to Lent, or to this particular day of Lent, or this particular feast day in Lent, and so on and so forth. And they have an app for your phone. They also have an app for your computer. And you can. It's actually a nice way if you have if you're looking for something a little different than usual. And so we'll have a link to that. So I like that as well. I'm more of I like to study scripture and stuff. I have a theology degree, so I like that sort of dig in and what's the Greek word there and how does it
references.
I just love that. That's how I met my wife, actually, at Bible study. But so that's my thing.
Are there a fair number of resources on that are free? Because I have one of the paid tier program, or paid tier whatever.
Yeah.
That gives me access to a ton. But
yes. I'm trying to see what they have here. They have,
because some of those are not cheap at all to have access to the huge library of resources.
Right.
No, I've got the Verbum app, and I've bought a couple of things there, but I'll have to go back and look because I didn't know about the Lenten reflections part.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it, but I've got Verbum Gold, which is a pretty good level one. It's not the top level, but it's got 1,100 resources, it says. But that's a good question. I'm not sure what they have for free stuff, but it's worth checking out. To go and take a look at it and see what, because I'm logged in on my account, so it's hard for me to see. Well,
I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes and let you know. So, but you can always get the basic free thing and add books. But I think the Lenten stuff is included. They're giving that away. I'm pretty sure. But let's talk about Lent and your phone, and both resources, apps on the phone, but also how to prevent our phones from becoming the attention tethers that they sometimes can be. They can be attention drains. But let's talk about the good stuff, the apps and things. What do you use for good apps for a prayer life and spiritual life for your phone? Father, why don't you start?
So one of the easiest apps to use to pray, the Liturgy of the Hours, which is one of the universal ways that the church prays. But if you were to pick up the book, the Liturgy of the Hours, it can be incredibly complicated to try to figure out, which ribbon to turn to and what prayer to pray. So there's an app out there called iBreviary, which lays it all out in exact order that you would pray it without you needing to flip to different ribbons in a book. It's actually one of the ways in which my parents started to use to learn how to pray, and they transitioned to the 1-volume Christian prayer book. But when there's a feast or a solemnity, they would even use iBreviary to double check what they were praying and if they were supposed to go. And so iBreviary is really good for the Liturgy of the Hours. It's free. I think also Universalis is an app that will do the Liturgy of the Hours. That's one that I don't personally use, but
I use that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's definitely one to check out.
Right.
Universalis, besides the Liturgy of the Hours, has a section on where they also have the daily mass readings, as well as then they have a separate section that goes through the Old and New Testament readings, or not the Old and New Testament, the commentaries that are often included in the Liturgy of the Hours, and they have that as a separate thing for just spiritual reading if you just want to skip straight to that. So they've got some nice things in there.
iBreviary's got the mass readings as well, which is good. And
good.
It's a really nice opportunity to get all that in one place. And I know even a lot of priests prefer that over the books and the ribbons and the whole thing. And while we're talking about the Liturgy of the Hours, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention SQPN's own podcast, Pray Station Portable. If you prefer to pray along to someone else's lead, that we have that available here, and you can download it, each of the separate hours: morning prayer, daytime prayer, office of readings, evening prayer, and night prayer are each separate episodes of the podcast. And we usually have them available several days in advance of the day that they'll be needed. And then you just listen to the one for that particular part of the day. And, you don't have to be, I was going to say religious about it. You don't have to be legalistic about it. You can listen to your morning prayer at noon if that's
Anytime.
if that's when that's when you get your first chance. And you don't have to listen to all of them. You don't have to pray all the hours if you don't want. Like, for some people, night prayer is just what they need, and that's perfectly fine. So I like that.
Priests and religious often take a promise to pray the liturgy of the hours. So lay people are under no such obligation. But for me, like, I do pray every day: the office of readings, morning prayer, daytime prayer, evening prayer, and night prayer.
Right.
So, and some religious orders will take that farther, and daytime prayer is actually split into mid-morning, midday, or mid-afternoon prayer.
Yeah. I think
I'm only required to pray one of those, but I could pray all three if I wanted. And some religious orders are doing every single one every single day.
We have, just to kind of bring a technology focus back on it, we have the podcast. We play it over our Amazon Echo in our kitchen. My wife does this. She takes the lead on that and plays it as she's getting ready in the morning. She does the morning prayer, and then the daytime prayer. And as she's making dinner, she does the evening prayer. And so all the kids in us are familiar with it. And in fact, from their very youngest ages, they were praying the Psalms along with it. The Psalms are familiar to them. The antiphons are familiar to them. It's part of the rhythm of their life, and that is something maybe to think about.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and that's kind of the point even of the liturgy of the hours is it's a way to get into the rhythm of life and prayer and have it interconnected, and not just I'm gonna fit prayer in at the end of the day when I can make it, but no, to stop at moments throughout the day and make it part of that rhythm.
Right. Prayer is, like, in that sense, like breathing. And in fact, that's another tip is to use your phone's clock to set reminders, like alarms, that remind you to pray throughout the day, which is a nice little thing to do. One of you have put in the show notes something about the Angelus, right? The
Angelus is a prayer that's typically prayed at 6 a.m, at noon, and at 6 p.m. So you could easily just set an alarm, and even on the smartphones, you can name your alarm.
Yep.
And you could just name it, the Angelus and even if you just wanted to do it at 12 noon every day, it's a great way to, again, kind of break you out of the mind numbingness of the life around you, and like refocus and have those specific moments to refocus throughout the day.
That's one of the features of Universalis, is you can set that to have it pop up the reminders for evening prayer, the Angelus, whichever ones you want. It will actually just pop up a reminder. And on my watch, I can tap on it, and it will show me the first part and then show me the full prayer.
Nice.
Right on my Apple Watch, in fact. So that's one of the things I've been really enjoying.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, one thing that I've done, and my wife and I have done, is we've set up alarms related to particular people we want to pray for. So the first hour I pray for my wife, the next one is for one of each of the children, and then family, and so on and so forth. We have 5 kids, so that takes up most of the day. But if I did them all separately, so I kind of bunch them together. But it's a nice way to break out of that routine, because you can get into, like, I'm working, I'm doing this thing. Break out of it and think, oh yeah, remember God, remember family, pray. It's a nice connection back to everything. So I like that idea. One of the things, some more apps I want to mention. I want to mention the a novena app, the Catholic novena app called Pray, and it's really nice. There are several novenas that are on the calendar during Lent. Usually, the St. Joseph novena. There's dozens of different novenas that you can pray. And so a novena is a way of praying for 9 days. Novena, it comes from the Latin word for 9. 9 days leading up to a feast day, and usually there's a formula, set of prayers that you pray, usually with an intention. You're praying for something in particular up to that day, and seeking the intercession usually of a saint or whoever's feast day that is. And there's you can do a novena to the Feast of the Sacred Heart, which is in June, I think. And I don't always have these off the top of my head. I kind of guess sometimes. But, there's the classic novena. The original one is the Feast of Pentecost, from the Feast of the Ascension to Pentecost Sunday. But this app is really nice because it has a lot of features in it to help remind you every day to come back and pray the novena. And then it will give you little notices. Hey, there's a novena for such and such starting in 2 days. Do you want to start that one? And so it's a nice app for that. You guys have any other apps that you want to recommend that might be?
Well, the Rosary apps, there's several of them that I have tried, and one's by Rosary Army.
Yes.
And then there's another one, One Hail Mary at a Time.com/Rosary, which is a really nice printed version of that. Type of explanation and a place to say the prayers and look at the mysteries. But the Rosary Army app is really nice because I can put it on audio and be listening to it while I'm in the car and that type of thing. And so it can help assist me when I don't have the extra time that I think I need to have to pray the Rosary, getting out the beads myself,
I want to particularly recommend the Rosary Army app because of our friends Greg and Jennifer Willits. It's their app. They are two of the founders of SQPN. They have their own podcast now. It's not Catholics Next Door. Imperfect Living, Adventures in Imperfect Living is their podcast. But they have the Rosary Army, which they started years ago, and they were among the first podcasters. But their app also includes Greg's artwork for each mystery of the Rosary, which is nice. So definitely check that out. And it's a nice way to say something. In some ways, like maybe pray the Rosary while you're on a walk or while you're driving to listen to it, that sort of thing. So those are good choices. How about ways we can use our technology to keep us from overusing the technology, from focusing too much on it? What are some ways we could work our phones to help us with that? Any suggestions on that?
Yeah. So one of them we have already talked about, just fasting, quote unquote, from social media apps.
Yeah.
Delete them from your phone, use them, go to Facebook via the web browser. One thing that I do like to do is to just delete them on my phone, and then I'm forced to just go to the computer to log in or whatever. But that can be a way to just, stop the mind-numbing scroll, Some of the other thoughts that I had too is and I'm assuming there's analogies to Android, but on an iPhone you have the Do Not Disturb mode.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just turn that on to silence all the notifications that come on your phone, so you're not checking your phone every time that it buzzes to see, that someone posted a new picture on Facebook or whatever. So it can be a way to just kind of try to limit the amount of screen time that you have. And along with that, since last year, this wasn't around last year, but Apple has come out with screen time.
Yep.
Which is a really cool tool within the iPhone system that tells you how much time you're spending on your phone and what apps you're using. But you can also use the Screen Time app to schedule downtime. And during that time, you can tell it only selected people who are calling, or only certain apps will be available during those times. So if you know that you're going to, I want to take this hour of prayer, but you want your phone on you, you can set it up so that, only mom and dad can call me during this time, and, and that'd be an emergency, and everything else is not available. You can set limits on the apps themselves, and iPhone lets you do it by category. So you could just, limit the amount of social networking that you can do every day, or the amount of games that you can play every day, or et cetera, et cetera. So those are some tips, and I'm sure Android has similar tools that you were able to use as well, but I am not an Android user, so I can't say.
Well, I went through the notifications today and basically turned off all notifications for anything like news or, the Facebook or all those types of things. But I leave the notifications on for Universalis and those things that I need. So those are the only notifications that pop up on my screen, except for phone calls or text messages.
That's a good idea. I mean, in general, turning off. I think people in general should turn off more notifications on their phones.
Yeah, default is always on, so you have to go through and say, no, I don't want them, or I just want a banner or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, turning them off was a very rewarding thing today.
I can imagine. One of the things that I do we talk about do not disturb is I like to, like when I'm going to pray, I turn on do not disturb, especially if I'm going to mass. And I might have mentioned before, but if you have an Apple Watch and an iPhone, if you turn on do not disturb on your watch, it turns it on your phone.
If you have it synced, there's a setting for that.
Yeah. Yes, you could have them connected, which I think is a good idea because it means I'm not fumbling for my phone when I get into church. I just flip the thing up on the watch, hit do not disturb, and because I've set a time on my calendar for mass, and I'm going to start doing this for my prayer time. I'm going to put it on the calendar. That's actually another tip. If you put things on the calendar, those become important things, and you get reminders, and you do them. But you can also set a do not disturb for that time period. So I have, every time we record a podcast, I have it on the calendar. So at the beginning of the podcast, I flip it up on my watch. I hit do not disturb during this event, and then you can be not disturbed during that time. And so that's a possibility, because there's nothing worse than sitting in prayer, adoration, and your wrist is buzzing, and you're not looking at it, but it's right there on the edge of your brain, of your mind, going, just look at me for a second. And no, I don't want to see it. Because even if you have it silenced, but it still buzzes. So that gets rid of that for you.
I'm of the opinion, I think, Dom, I think that's a great idea, especially if you have a family and if there's an emergency, you need your phone on you.
Yeah.
For me personally, I don't have the same risk constraints. I will not take my phone into prayer. I will not have my phone on me when I'm celebrating mass. And just not having the phone physically on me frees my mind to focus on what I'm actually doing,
right?
Which is celebrating the mass or just sitting in adoration or whatever it is. If I have the phone on me, even if it's on do not disturb, there's always that in the back of your mind that you
awareness.
What if there's something that came through? What if someone texted me, and I just get rid of the temptation entirely.
I like the idea of putting it in another place, but it's still on. I have the problem that if I turn my phone off, I'm always scared that I'm not going to be able to find it later with Find My Phone because it's off. Yep. So I never turn my phone off, but I like the idea of just leaving it in the car, put it in the glove box or something like that. That's a great idea.
I can't put it in the car. We go to church in a bad neighborhood, honestly. I'm afraid to leave it in the car. But the other thing is, my wife and I sometimes like to take notes during the homily. We're those kind of Catholics where we want to.
Well, and it's true. I do use the phone to look at some of the prayers before Mass, and Randy, of course, uses his iPad during the Mass to see the
large print,
all of the prayers, right? The large print and everything.
So, but it's a good point. It's really, if you can, especially at home, like if you're at home praying, put your phone in the other room, and don't pray in a room with the tech. Pray, find a space where you're far away from that stuff as much as you can. I like that point, because then you're not tempted and you're not distracted. One of you had this other suggestion about setting your phone. Was that you, Father Andrew?
It was. It's not something that I've been brave enough to do, but I had a priest friend last year who did this, and he suggested using your phone. You can go into the accessibility options and you can change the contrast of the phone, and you can actually set your phone to a grayscale color option. So you're sort of fasting from the bright, vivid colors, and you're still getting the same information, but it's causing a little bit more self-denial in what you're looking at. So you can do that on iPhone, and again, I'm sure you can do it on Android as well. It's a good idea if that's you feel something that you're called to.
Now, on the other side of that is my next suggestion, which is my alma mater, Franciscan University. They have a Lenten website that they've offered. It's called 40 Days of Devotion, but on it they have fun, beautiful Lenten wallpapers for your phone. So you want that's another way to create sort of a reminder or something that because we do look at our phones many times a day, and other people see our phones too, which could be a way of being a little soft evangelization. And so you could swap out your wallpaper for Lent or switch it up. They've got like a dozen of them, so you could every few days even. And something to think about is maybe you want to put on your phone as a reminder of it. But some of them are grayscale, so you could do it in grayscale too. That would be good.
Mm-hmm. I have seen people on Facebook change their profile picture to a Lenten cross or a Lenten thing. Same thing at Easter, change it again so it's not their face sitting there.
Yeah.
It is a reminder to all the people who are seeing their profile. Hey, I'm Catholic. I'm thinking of this season.
On the other hand, it does get a little confusing for the rest of us because I've got like a dozen friends who just have like a purple square, and I'm like, who was that again? Who said that?
Who are you?
I need to see your profile. Yeah, but I get what you're saying. We can evangelize with our social media, and that's actually a nice point.
Yep.
Anything else we want to talk about with Lent and our tech, Father? You have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention this. Tech, if it's used in a way to help you enter into prayer, it's absolutely good. So, that's a great way to do Lent. But I think it's also just as important to remember that shutting off the phone entirely can be a really good way to do it too. You walk around the grocery store, and how many of us, when we're standing in line at the grocery store, just pull out our phone and start scrolling and start, distracting ourselves from the pain, so to speak, of waiting in line. When there's a lot to be said about just allowing yourself to sit in that without distracting yourself and just letting the Lord be present in those moments. And so that can be a really tough discipline for us, especially when we don't want to sit in silence or we don't want to stand in line. But the Lord is Lord of, he's the Lord of the past, the present, and the future. And often we forget that he's in the present with us.
Right.
And so sometimes just putting the phone away can help us to just be present. And whether that's, standing in line and noticing a little kid smile at you, or, all sorts of things that the grace and blessings that God wants to give us will miss if we're just looking at our phone to distract ourselves to get to the next thing.
That's a good point.
Good.
Yeah.
That reminds me that when I was in college, long before there were smartphones or portable phones for that matter in general use, one of my professors, Father Giles Dimmick, who a famous Dominican, he said too many people get into their car and turn on the radio and listen to there's something to be said for turning off the distraction. So whether even beyond the phone, don't get in your car and don't turn anything on and just drive in silence, drive
or pray out loud
or in prayer, but be open to the Lord and not, the distractions around you. Spend time out in the world without I go for a walk every day. I try to anyway. I listen to podcasts. That's really the only time I can listen to some of my podcasts. But, some days I just want to walk. I just want to go out and just be present to the nature around me, the neighborhood around me, really. But I guess where I walk in my neighborhood. So I don't know. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. And especially in Lent, to disconnect, in a way, it's going into the desert with Jesus in that sense.
Well, it's interesting that you already made that connection because the Pope made that same exact connection today in his address, his Wednesday address.
He's so smart.
Yeah, so I pulled that up because he just said some really interesting things. He said, and this is a quote from him. He said, "Lent is a time to disconnect from cell phones and to connect to the gospel." And he recalled when he was a child and didn't have television, and his family would make a point of not listening to the radio. And then he went on to say that, it is a time to give up useless words, chatter, rumors, gossip, and talk and speak directly to the Lord. And so, social media and all these things, they're wonderful. They're good. They're tools. But often, we can just get caught up in the useless chatter that it is. And then we, again, forget to actually have the heart-to-heart conversations with the Lord or with those whom we love.
That's a good point.
yeah, keep those things in mind as we enter into this Lenten season.
I think that's a good way to wrap up this segment and to move on. But folks, I hope you've got some good, interesting ideas out of this for how to live a better Lent, with and without technology. If you've got in particular ideas or ways you live Lent with and without technology, be sure to let us know. You can send email to technology@sqpn.com or various other ways we'll give at the end of the show to connect with us and let us know. So let's move on to our next topic, and this is a timely one, of course. The coronavirus, which technically is called COVID-15, because I'll be the pedant for the moment. The coronavirus describes all kinds of viruses, including different flus and colds. This is a particular kind called COVID-15, but everybody just calls it coronavirus, and I will too. It's scary. I'll be straight up. It's a scary thing that they're talking about pandemics and and coming to the U.S. and it's so virulent. And that fear is, some people see that as an opportunity. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about ways to prevent yourself from getting scammed by fake coronavirus hucksters, phishing scams. So do either of you have any information on that you wanted to share? Pat, did you have any resources on that you wanted to talk about?
I didn't look up any resources. I figured that the ones that you had provided were good, so I didn't look up anything different.
Oh, okay. So one of them is NBC News had an article that I found that you're mentioning, where they talk about some of these bogus emails, these phishing emails. Phishing is where people present you with a fake email design that's trying to get you to click on a link that you think is safe, but leads you into some way of them attacking your technology. And so there are these emails that purport to be from the World Health Organization or the CDC or various other health organizations, and they open the attached document about safety measures regarding the coronavirus, et cetera, and it's a link to a bogus website or some other viral program. So one of the things you can do is to first you don't click links in random emails. I think that's one of the things. If you get an email from an organization, open up your web browser and type in the email the web address for that organization. And if the information is there, that it'll be there on the page.
And if I could add, Dom, to that, because particularly you can actually create a link within an email and send it out that takes you to a place that is not what is appearing on the link that you just clicked.
Right.
So yeah, it is never a good idea to just click on a random link in an email. But if you get something that looks like it's from the CDC, just go to the CDC's website, type it into your web browser and go there rather than going through the email.
Right. The other thing to avoid is essentially technological snake oil, fake tests and fake, virus cures or instead of a bug zapper, it's virus zapper that you hang in your. None of that stuff is real. If it were real, everyone would have it. They would be hanging around our cities and no one would ever get sick. Don't fall for that stuff.
Don't wear garlic around your neck.
Well, unless you want to attract an Italian, don't wear garlic around your neck. That's the simple one there. But don't be credulous. Be skeptical of this stuff, because, like I said, there's a lot of people out there who are trying to take advantage. I mean, it's horrible. But every time there's some sort of tragedy or some bad thing like this, somebody's looking for a way to make a buck off of it, and that's never good. Anything else we want to say about that one? Any other tips you want to give?
I would say just use common sense. If it sounds too good to be true, it more than likely is.
Or too scary that you're outraged. That's probably another one that they're preying on fear and outrage.
Yep.
That's a good point. That's the latest thing now is it's not just some people out to make a buck. It's also people out to disrupt our society, perhaps other nations. And they want to create fear, distrust. They want to undermine our economy or our political system. And one of the ways to do that is to create fear and anger. And so if you find something that's particularly making you angry, particularly making you fearful, maybe something that blames the virus on a particular political ideology or point of view
or person,
be skeptical of it. All right. Good. I think that's a good. There's not a lot to say about that except just be skeptical. I do want to. We got a couple of headlines I want to talk about. One of the things I want to mention is something that just came out just before we started recording. If you use the Eero home Wi-Fi router, it's a relatively new and it's somewhat advanced Wi-Fi mesh system, which means that there's a base station like you normally have, and then you can set up what they call beacons, which extend the network. If you have either a big home or an older homes, because older homes sometimes are built in such a way as to block radio signals, like my home. You can set up these repeaters, and so Eero just released its implementation of something that Apple created last year, which allows routers, that's the Wi-Fi router, to work with HomeKit, your smart home stuff. And one of the what it does is it makes you more secure. By default, the way it sets it up is it allows your various HomeKit accessories to connect to an automatically updated list of manufacturer-approved internet services and local devices, and that's it. So the fear is that a hacked light bulb or camera or whatever can be controlled and used to send data elsewhere. It's not exactly common unless you're using some weird third-party stuff, but the fact is it can happen. And so this is just another layer of security to prevent that at the router level. There's more to it, and I'm sure that if you're an Eero customer, you'll update your app and it'll be in there and it'll lead you through it. But I thought that was an interesting update. Every day they're trying to make this stuff more and more secure and easier for the average person to use, and that's a good update. Yeah, I think at this point we had such a good discussion. We should probably move on to our picks of the week. What do you think? Unless there's another headline that you all feel called to talk about.
Well, the one that you posted that I really liked was about the companies using virtual reality to improve the life of seniors.
Oh, sure.
I went through that earlier today, and it was beautiful. It really was.
Yeah, we talked a little about, actually, last week, we talked about technology use with our the older folks in our lives. And this was one that came up. It was last summer, I think, was it originally came out. But these different companies are helping senior citizens who are in end of life care. They're in hospice, they're in nursing homes or assisted living. They're helping them with virtual reality headsets to do different things. What was there one particular that you thought was particularly compelling?
Oh, I like the one that talked about, letting seniors who are homebound that can't get out and travel anymore, that let them virtually travel to places that they had either been, that had special significance for them, or that they had never had an opportunity and kind of I wish I could have gone to Germany, or I wish I could have gone to here. And just the look of joy on some of these people when they got to go back and see where they got married, or when they got to see where they went on their honeymoon. It was just so beautiful. To be able to let them break out of their shell, their prison.
Right.
That they're in.
There was one emotionally. There was a woman who, elderly woman who as a child was exiled from Cuba, when Castro took over, and hadn't been able to go back, and was able to visit her home after decades of not being there. She says it gave life to her soul, she said, and that's a beautiful thing. And because VR can be so immersive, it can really, it make you feel like you're in that place, and it's really neat to see that.
Well, and there was one other episode in there where they talked about using VR to help people who are limited in their opportunities for exercise to make it more immersive, so that they would feel like they were out for a walk in a real place, or they were doing their stationary bike and really biking through this beautiful scenery. And I thought that was kind of cool, because none of us like exercise, and so especially if they're bound physically, this gives a little bit more opportunity to do it in a more joyful manner.
That's a good point. I like the one where it said that one company, they used 360 cameras to capture like particular experiences. For example, they filmed a live band playing Frank Sinatra with the musicians and a crowd of actors dressed in 1950s clothing.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Although I'm not sure when I'm that age, I want to be like hanging out in like a 90s disco club. You know, I'm not sure I want that. But
well, that's your own personal history.
Exactly. I'd rather be in the 50s.
Maybe you could be back in Steubenville or over at the Vatican. You know, imagine taking a virtual tour of the Vatican when you can't travel anymore.
Yep.
That would be so neat.
A couple of years ago, I know this is related, but not to seniors necessarily, but there was an exhibit at a museum in Washington D.C. where they did the same scans of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem.
Oh wow!
And I was able to go visit it virtually through this VR set, which was really cool.
Awesome.
Wow, I would love to.
I don't know if I'll ever get to Jerusalem, but yeah. So those things are really, really powerful.
There are these certain VR, they're mostly done for entertainment, but certain kinds of VR systems where they create an environment. So you're wearing the headset that shows you the environment, but then they have props and things that, so like when you reach out to touch the wall, there's a wall there, or if there's an obstacle in front of you, you know, you touch the obstacle, or if the wind blows, it's a fan blowing your face. So they create the sensations of being in the place that you're seeing. I would love to be able to like you. I don't think I'll ever go to the Holy Land, so I would love to be able to see these places more than just in the photos, but to almost be in that place. That would be really cool. I wonder if they'll ever do. No, they probably won't ever do Star Wars Galaxy's Edge as a VR experience.
No, they want you to go.
I can tell you about it in April because I'm going.
Oh, I'm a little jealous.
Hey, you take a VR set with you to record it all.
Just
for
wear
us.
a 360 camera rig on your head. That's simple. I heard, I heard. By the way, from our friends at the Secrets of Disney podcast, which is also on the SQPN network, which is up again, Deborah Shaban said she heard from a little birdie, Deborah used to work at Disney, that there's a Chewbacca mode in the Millennium Falcon ride.
I saw a news article about it.
Oh, okay. That if you crash the Millennium Falcon a lot, you get Chewbacca yells at you the whole time. I want to go just for that. But anyway, we're off on a tangent on that one. But
I'm actually going to do some live podcasting from Disney for them.
Awesome!
Oh,
Wow! Wow! Very good.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll have plenty to talk about on the Secrets of Star Wars, which was another podcast that Father Andrew hosts with SQPN. If you're a Star Wars fan. All right, so let's that was great, Pat. Thank you for reminding me to talk about that. Let's talk about our picks of the week. Father Andrew, what's your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is a online web tool called Speedtest. Speedtest.net. It is something that just determines how fast your internet connection is, how fast you download, and how fast you can upload through your current internet service provider. And this is super helpful. It's something that I've used to make sure that I have the right bandwidth to do the Skype calls and the podcasting.
Oh yeah.
But it's also a super important tool so that you can use it if you're trying to make sure that you're getting the download speeds that are promised to you by your internet service providers. So if you're paying for 10 megabits per second or 25 or 100, depending on your level of use, you can use this to see if you're genuinely getting what they've promised you. And if you're not, then you can use this as a reason to call them up and see if they can give you a discount or fix whatever issue it is that you have, that you're not getting the speeds that you were promised and that you're paying for.
Right. There might be like equipment on the pole that isn't working perfectly.
Yep.
You know, one thing to keep in mind is when you do run it, that other things on your local network will also sometimes suck up some of your bandwidth. So you won't necessarily get all that you're paying for, but if it's not close, that would be the thing. Mm-hmm. They also make an app for your phone, but it really only makes sense to do that when you're on your Wi-Fi. Don't do it when your phone is on the cell network, because then you're just testing the cell network speed. So but that's a good one.
Well, I also use it for troubleshooting when I'm and show my clients how to use that, because that way, if it starts going down, first thing I tell them is reboot the router, and often that will bring it back to the good clean state. Yeah. But if it continues to be bad, then you start knocking on the door of your internet company and say, "Hey, I'm not getting what you told me I was."
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good.
And a lot of times, if it happens too often that it keeps going down, it may be time to buy a new router.
Right. They age just like all other electronics. Good. That's a good pick. Pat, what's your pick this week?
Well, not everybody is computer crazy as I am, but there are a lot of times that I've got people that may have upgraded and gotten a new machine, but they've still got their old machine that maybe is running an app on an operating system that they really can't get rid of yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a device that's called a KVM switch, keyboard, video, mouse, and it allows you to switch between two machines so that you've got one video, one keyboard, one mouse, and you just hit a button and you're seeing the other computer. And so I have several of my people recently, as we moved from Windows 7 into Windows 10, that are in this situation. They've got applications that will not go onto the new operating system. And so they've got two machines, and that's one way they can keep them and not be terribly inconvenienced. They've got two CPUs sitting there, but they only have to have one screen, keyboard, monitor.
Yep. Good. That's a good choice, and they usually come in different varieties. Like if you have an HDMI monitor or a VGA monitor or various ones like that. But yeah, that's that way you don't have your desk littered with keyboards and that such things. Very good. So my pick is not a computer gadget. It's not a phone gadget. This is a cooking gadget, but it's also a home gadget. I use it for cooking a lot, but I use it for other home things, and it's kind of handy. I never thought I'd find a use for it, and this is an handheld infrared thermometer. So what it is, I got this idea from Alton Brown. Let me just throw that out there.
Yes.
So
yes.
Give him credit where credit's due. So what it is it's looks like a little laser pistol, and it's got a little display on it, and it's a pistol grip, and you pull the trigger, and a red dot shines on something, and the readout on the handheld display tells you what its temperature is, which is handy. And if you can get real close to something and get a very small diameter measurement, the further away you are, the greater area you're getting an average temperature of, if you know what I mean. I use this all the time. So I use this like for when I'm cooking on my griddle. Like a thermometer is great if I need to measure oil or the temperature of a food, and I can stick it in it. But an infrared one, measures the surface temperature. So my griddle, my pan, if I want to make sure the pan is hot enough to start cooking on, that's a great use for it. Another way I've used it is like when I'm trying to figure out, we have forced hot air ventilation. If I want to find out if I'm getting hot air coming out of all the vents and what the temperature is, I'll walk under the vent, point it at it as the air's blowing, and it tells me what the temperature is. Or AC is the other one that it does. So air conditioning or heat. Another one for those of us who live in northern climes, we have to worry about pipes freezing. And under my kitchen sink, there's the wall, the back wall of the house. And so on particularly cold nights, I'll sometimes open it up and point it at the back wall behind the sink underneath and find out how cold is it in there. And if it's getting pretty cold and I'm afraid of my pipes freezing, I'll keep it open and I'll get some warm air in there and that sort of thing like that. But it's interesting how many uses you'll find for it. And then sometimes it's fun, like it's 100 degrees out. How hot is the back patio? Oh, I could fry an egg on that, that sort of thing. But you'd be amazed at how many times you'll use this little device. And best thing, the one I've got linked that I got, it's $15. It's almost nothing. It's almost an impulse buy. So that's a.
Now, can you take the kids' temperature with it? May see if they're running a fever.
I don't think it's human accurate, but it'll get you in the ballpark. For that, I have a different a gadget thermometer, which might be a future pick if I haven't already picked it yet. I'll have to double check. But that's a lot of words about an infrared thermometer. All right, so I think that's a good place to wrap things up. I do want to, before we go, take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology this week, including Adika L., Tom V., Randy L., Afton R., and Paul C. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of any of the things we had to discuss? Like I mentioned, the Lenten stuff, we'd love to hear from you, how you use or don't use technology during Lent. You can comment on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. And you'll find links from our discussion, all the things we talked about, and our picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. And if you're still using social media this Lent, remember to like the Secrets of Technology on Facebook, find us on Twitter at SQPN, and leave us some comments in those various places, which helps juice the algorithm and lets other people know that we're here. Until next time, Pat Scott, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Adios.
Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you as well.
Absolutely.
And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.